against the walls. Stop her. The hallway felt and she ran towards the church. She fell to her knees inside, out of the school into the night. Sat in small group. They said the school would shape her future. They never told her it would test her courage. The bus rolled slowly through the quiet evening road, carrying Amina towards her new boarding school. As the gate arrived, a strange feeling settled in her chest. She stepped down from the bus, holding her small bag tightly. The compound looked normal, but something felt different. That night, sleep refused to come. The dormitory was silent, yet her mind was not. She walked through the hallway, the light dim, shadows stretching along the walls. Then she saw them, a small group of older students whispering in a classroom, watching, waiting. The next day, the glance became heavier. The older student approached her calmly. They spoke softly, but their words carried weight. They invited her to join them, to belong, to be protected, but something in their eyes unsettled her. Days passed. The pressure grew. They formed circles. They whispered in corners. They watched her every move. One night, she found herself standing in the center of a classroom. The older students sat around her in a circle, their faces serious, their voices low. She felt trapped. Then she made a choice. She would not stay. Suddenly she ran down the hallway. Her footsteps echoed loudly against the walls. Behind her, voices shouted, "Stop her!" The hallway felt endless, but she didn't stop. She pushed through the gate and into the night. Her heart pounded as she ran towards the church. The street was quiet. The building stood ahead, glowing warmly in the darkness. She fell to her knees inside. Tears streamed down her face as she explained everything to the pastor. The meetings, the pressure, the feelings, the fear. They said if I refuse, something bad will happen to me. She cried. The pastor listened carefully. Then he said gently, "You did the right thing." Without hesitating, he stood and together they returned to the school. They entered the classroom. The older students were seated in a circle. When they saw Amina standing there, they froze. One by one, their heads turned towards her. Shocked filled their faces. She wasn't supposed to come back. She brought someone. The room fell silent. The pastor stepped forward calmly. The atmosphere shifted. The students began to kneel. The fear that once ruled them began to fade. Light replaced tensions. Peace replaced silence. But not everyone stayed. Senior Deborah, the head prefect who had led the group, stood frozen in the corridor. She realized her control was broken. Panic crossed her face, and then she ran out of the school into the night. She never returned. The school felt different now, calmer, lighter. Amina walked slowly away from the compound at sunrise. The shadow behind her were gone. She was no longer afraid. She was no longer alone. She was free. 3 years later, Amina had become the senior prefect of the adult boarding school. She was calm, disciplined, and always neat. Not everyone liked her. Some students felt uncomfortable around her. They believed she made them look careless. They believed teachers respected her more than the rest of them. Slowly, jealousy began to grow. One afternoon, three students stood in the hallway. They were silent, serious, and emotionless. The atmosphere felt tight. Three of them began walking slowly down the corridor together. Their steps were steady. Their face showed quiet anger. They spoke in low voices about Amina. They did not notice who might be watching. Inside the classroom, Amina was already there. When the students entered, they froze one by one. Their heads turned towards her. Surprised crossed their faces, then blanked expression. No one expected her to be standing there so calmly. She said nothing, she only observed. The silence in the room was louder than noise. Days passed, and the tension followed her everywhere. One evening, Amina walked alone across the school compound. At sunset, the sky glowed orange and gold. From the upper balcony, students watched her quietly. No one waved, no one spoke. They only stared as she walked past. Another day, she sat alone at a table. Other students sat in small group far from her. They whispered and occasionally glanced in her direction. She could feel the distance, but she didn't react. At her locker, two students stood too close behind her. They did not speak. Their presence was intentional. It was meant to make her uncomfortable, but she remained calm. That night, the hallway was dark. Amina stood alone at the far end. In the shadows behind her, several students lingered, watching, waiting, not bold enough to approach her directly. In the dorm room later, Amina sat upright in her bed. The lights were dim. Other students lay in their beds, but they were awake. Their eyes were open. They watched her silently in the darkness. The jealousy had not faded, it had grown. Later that night, the students quietly left their rooms. They gathered in a classroom. They arranged the chairs in a perfect circle. It felt secretive, planned. They sat down and began speaking in low tones. They complained about Amina. They said she acted too perfect. They said she behaved like she she was better than everyone. Some suggested finding a way to report her falsely. They believed she would never know, but she did. Amina stepped into the room. She stood at the edge of the circle. Slowly, everywhere, every student turned towards her. No one had expected her. The room fell completely silent. She walked into the center of the circle. The same circle meant to push her out now surrounded her. She did not shout. She did not accuse them. She only asked one simple question. Why? At first, no one answered. The silence became uncomfortable. Finally, one student stood up. Her confidence was gone. She admitted they were jealous. She admitted they felt insecure. She admitted they had been planning against her. One by one, the others lowered their heads. Some stood, some nearly knelt. The anger that once filled them had turned into shame. Amina listened quietly. She told them that she had never tried to compete with them. She only focused on her responsibility. Leadership was not about pride, it was about discipline and service. Her calmness broke them more than anger would have. The tension that started in the hallway, the washing from balconies, the silent stares at the table, the shadows at the night, the circle of plotting, it all ended in that classroom. The students apologized. The circle closed slowly. The atmosphere changed. By morning, the students felt different. The hallway no longer felt heavy. The whispered stopped. The distance faded. Amina remained senior prefect, not because she fought them, but because she stood firm, calm, and unshaken. And that ended the quiet war against her.